Hi, my name is Daire Keogh. I'm Deputy President of Dublin City University, and you're listening to In Conversation With.
Okay, so hello and welcome to In Conversation with myself, Colin, and as always, I'm joined by my lovely co-host, Mr. Gavin Kelly.
How you doing?
And Mr. Greg Mulhall.
Is lovely really the operative word you want to use for
Lovely.
Gavin today?
Lovely co-hosts. How are we, gents?
We're good.
Yeah,
we're
good.
Yeah,
Lovely.
we're a little bit butterfly, you know.
Yeah.
Why would we be butterfly?
Well, we are with esteemed Deputy President of DCU and quite the academic man, I must say, Mr. Daire Keogh.
How are you? Thank you.
Thanks-
You're very welcome.
Thanks for agreeing for the interview,
No,
Daire.
absolutely delighted.
So I'll start like I traditionally do with every interview. And now it wasn't me directly that approached you first, but what was the initial thought when Ross Munley of the alumni office approached you asking you to be on this podcast?
I was pleased. I'm always glad of an opportunity to meet people and to talk about what we do. Very proud of what we do in the university, and I was delighted for an opportunity to talk about it. So delighted, and to hear your experience of the university as well.
Mm-hmm. Very good. So we'll get to your time in DCU later.
We'll start a little bit earlier.
Yeah,
than
we'll
that.
Okay,
start.
go right back. Where do you far back
Yeah,
you want to
so
go?
we'll take it back. So take us back to your very earliest education. Where did you grow up? Where did you go to school?
Yeah,
I
I lived in Rafarnham. My both parents are Dubs, which is unusual. My grandparents. And
Slightly unfortunate.
yeah,
I
so
suppose,
unfortunately,
as well.
maybe everybody. It could be worse. It could be from Midland counties. Or something. But no, we're all Dubs, which I suppose is unusual. So we grew up in Rafarnham, and it was rural at that stage. I mean, where we lived, there were no houses beyond us, so it was an interesting place. So I went to school with the Loretto boys at that stage in Rafarnham, and then went on from there, as my father had done into Sing Street. So we got the bus into town from about the age of 8. I was kind of packed on the bus every day and coming home from town. So Sing Street was an adventure. I don't know whether people have seen the film Sing Street.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
That's exactly what it was like. And there's a journalist rang me and he said, "Oh, you were at school in Sing Street. It wasn't like that, was it?" And I said, "No, it was absolutely like that." So that film was very evocative. But Sing Street was a great experience. Gay Byrne says in his autobiography that after Sing Street, everything else in life was a doddle. But it was fantastic school. I'm not sure that the learning was very good in it, but certainly what we learned from each other.
Yeah.
And there were great characters.
And were you always academically inclined?
Not particularly. I wouldn't think.
Always good report cards, no?
No, not at all. I would say just good. I mean, it was old style academic school, and it was solid. I would say. Do you know that sounds? But
an all-rounder.
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed history in school. History was probably my best subject. I enjoyed history in school, and
Evident from your later
yeah,
third level studies.
Yeah, that's what I ended up studying. But no, so that was Singer.
And did you ever engage with any extracurricular activities? Was sport a big part?
Well, sport wasn't, unfortunately. My coordination was absolutely brutal.
Like that.
And
Yeah.
no, mine was very bad. And my brothers were all fairly good golfers. And I remember as a child, somebody saying to my dad, "Oh, does Dara take up clubs at all?" And my father says, "Oh, the only thing Dara takes up is a knife and fork." So I was involved in a lot of the clubs in terms of being secretary of clubs and did things like I got to kind of line pitches and organise
the
things.
organisation
So
aspect of it, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I really regret that. As I said, my coordination is brutal. Like even now, it's team building exercises is when we throw balls, the bocce balls around. Like I hate that, but I'm not. It doesn't bother me, but it's just the way it is.
Yeah, it doesn't bother me either.
That's not what
So this is looking like a kind of a geeks club here in terms of the interviews. Yeah.
So Daire, you get to third level.
Yeah.
What are you studying, and how was your experience at third level in general?
No, it was interesting. When I left school, I went to UCD and studied philosophy, economics, and history, and then went on and did pure history.
That's a heavy few subjects to be taken on, I have to say.
So I enjoyed that, and then in kind of curiously, I suppose I thought that I might have a vocation to be a priest. So I spent some time studying for the priesthood. So I went to Italy and studied in the Gregorian University.
Wow.
So I was 2 years in Rome. So that was very different, as you could imagine. But
And what was your motivation behind at the time? Why did you leave?
Why did I leave? I just wasn't. I wasn't cut out for it. It just didn't. It didn't. Just temperamentally, I think temperamentally like when you say to people about celibacy, it's not. It's just. It wasn't. Just wasn't for me. It was frustrating, really. But it was a very good experience. I mean, I have no regrets. I made great friends, and that was a very international context. I mean, there were people there from all over the world, and like if you think communications were different then, so you didn't have the internet or the email, or didn't have mobile phones, so you were reliant on post. So letter writing, you used to write a lot of letters, and you were very isolated. So you were actually immersed in the situation. And Aer Lingus had at that stage like one flight in the wintertime, one flight a week to Rome, and 2 flights in the summer. And at the same time, they had this palatial office in one of the most expensive parts of Rome, which was a statement, I suppose, of Ireland's ambitions. But it was a good experience. The crowd, who fellow students, were they were very bright, and it was just, I suppose, changed perspective in terms of life. And I think that was a very influential experience in terms of how I would see myself kind of develop subsequently, the things that were priorities to me.
So
afterwards.
What did you go
What
to
did I
do
do?
when you came
When
home?
I took the voluntary redundancy, left Rome, and I came home.
Oh, actually, sorry. I actually have a funny story about that. Not about you.
Well,
my former landlord in Galway, similar enough story, bar the going as far as Italy. He actually did join a seminary in Ireland, and he was from Clare, and he went to a seminary up the country somewhere, and he'd write home regularly enough, and then it kind of stopped, and then after like 3-4 years, his mum got a letter in the post.
Say that he'd left.
Yeah, that he just dropped out. And she heard nothing from him for like another year or two. Next thing, she got a letter from Cadbury's in Birmingham to say that congratulations, Mr. Blank. You've been accepted to the graduate program in in Cadbury's.
Chocolate making.
Yeah, there you go. And I asked him about it one time, and he just said, wasn't for me. And I just up sticks in the middle of the night and left.
And
He said he just worked some shit jobs he got a boat over to.
An eclectic mix of experiences.
Yeah. He lived in a port cabin outside our house, and he owned all the apartments, like, and everything. Nice guy.
So he did well out of it.
Yeah.
He didn't stay long in Cadbury's, obviously, did he?
He stayed for about 5 years.
Okay.
It was great. It was like a little puzzle, because his brother-in-law came one day to try and fix our internet, and he ended up telling me all these stories, and I was able to piece it all together.
Yeah. But I mean, I think it's different now. I mean, if somebody said to you now, I mean, they were going to study for the pre-study, was, it's exceptional. Nobody does it now. I mean, the people who go,
it's
the
becoming
numbers are
less and less
tiny.
common now.
But it was common, and the guys who were there, I think at least, that they were kind of fairly rounded. They were, but it was just a different world. I mean, we had no sense of any of the things, the revelations in the interim. We had no sense of any of that. It's a very changed world.
So, like, as I was
So what happened then?
before I was rudely interrupted.
So what happened then?
Did you come home then?
Yeah, then I came home and I decided that I would do a PhD in history. That
was in Trinity?
That was in Trinity.
Yeah.
So registered in Trinity, and began. And just when I had started, a local school, St. McDara's in Temple Oak, that they advertised they needed a temporary teacher. So I applied for a job there. The temporary teacher said, "Oh, this is great, I'll do this. It'll give me a few bob, keep me going for the winter." And then at the end of the first period, when somebody was sick, the principal said, "Would you stay on part-time?" So I stayed on. So I taught all the way through when I was doing the PhD. I worked in the school part-time.
Very good.
And then when I finished the PhD, then continued on there while I was kind of part-time in a number of places, part-time in Trinity and Maynooth and UCD, St. Pat's. And
Is there any college in Ireland you haven't
and
attended?
here as well.
Yeah.
Was very early on again in started
Before it was
working.
called DCU?
Well, USCL, when we had what's now DCU Connected, wrote a program from them and was teaching at that stage. So it was just interesting to be working and, as I say, teaching every place at the same time.
And before we go on, what is it about history that attracted you so much?
I just liked it. I liked the people side of it. I liked the story. I liked I loved the research. I mean, just
Particularly modern Irish history is what
yeah,
you're
it was
that you
early modern. It
specialise.
was Ireland and the French Revolution is what
Yeah.
I worked on. But just working through archives, just I suppose one of the things history does in terms of people's career development, kind of more broadly, and we can see that now what we call employability. Just it's a good discipline in terms of working through data, data management, organisation, bring kind of analysis to it, gives you great perspective, but also I think from a human point of view, that sense of empathy, to try to put yourself into the situation. Like, what side would you have been on in the French Revolution, for instance? Would you have been with the Royalists or would you have been with the Revolutionaries? Would you? And I think that's a point for all of us. Like, I think the emotion we do best in Ireland is indignation, and we're very indignant about the past. But put ourselves back in any of the situations, like, what side would we have been? Would you have joined the French Resistance?
Actually, I just started reading at the weekend.
yeah.
The first part of Dave McCullough's
Oh, really?
two-part.
Yeah.
I work in a bookshop at home, and we're able to take out books under our name for free, basically,
Yeah.
and read them. and
Did
bring
you
them
have to
back.
get like a trolley or something to get that one out of the shop?
It's a big book.
It's a big
but
book,
yeah,
yeah.
Dave McCullough, who is of course a former guest of the show, he wrote a
Volume 2 now available.
Yeah, 2-volume biography on Eamon de Valera,
Yeah.
and I just picked up the first part there. It's 400 pages. I'm only 20 or so in.
Yeah.
But it is really good, and it does give a very even-handed insight into kind of.
Yeah.
And I see where you're coming from.
Yeah.
You kind of have, because like it's looking at Eamon de Valera, and obviously there's much that's been said about him and his
Yeah.
role in Irish history, and it is interesting to kind of look at it like the two choices or the two sides throughout his.
Like, what side would you have been on? I mean, I'm not. It's a rhetorical question, but what side in the treaty? What side would you have been on? Would you, in say 1916, have kept your head down? The big issues. I mean, we're all indignant about, say, the Holocaust, for instance. Would we have stopped trains transporting Jews to the concentration camps? And there is a sense, I think, sometimes in history, and we see it here with some of our big questions about the institutions and mother and baby homes and so on. Would we have been brave enough to call a halt to different activities? So history is, I enjoy it very much, but it does give you an empathy, I think, with people.
When did you know you had to grow for history that you were going to carry it to the level that you did?
I think, like, in some ways, I enjoyed it in school. It was, as I say, one of my favourite subjects. I liked it. I liked the writing. I suppose the circumstances when I started history, say when I left, when I came home from Rome, I never really thought at that stage that I'd spend the rest of my days in history. So it was just kind of ended up in it in a way. Maybe something I would have enjoyed, like, say, the Department of Foreign Affairs, but they had kind of recruiting embargoes at the time. So when I say it was an accident that I ended up in it, it probably was. I don't. It's okay.
Every
single interview.
Yeah.
Apologies.
Yeah. No, it's okay.
Did you have it?
If you more,
Did you had yours on silent as well?
Yeah, I did,
Okay.
but I just
Right.
decided to check.
yeah, mine is on
Okay.
silent. Yeah.
Yeah, I have to say, obviously did history in primary school but I never
Because
did it
you had
for
to.
I never did it for junior cert. It was actually a choice between history and
Really?
geography in my school. Yeah,
What school did you go to again?
St Declan's Community
Okay,
College
yeah.
in Waterford, and yeah, we had a choice in junior cert between geography and history.
I thought you had to do it.
Yeah.
No,
Isn't
I mean,
Uh,
that's one of the
so-
there's a big debate at the moment about compulsory history in the junior cert.
yeah.
But the fact is that it was never compulsory in all schools, that only in the voluntary
Now
secondary
we
schools.
we probably have some subjects that are compulsory in our school that maybe aren't in others.
Okay.
So it's
Do you
kinda
think it
worked
should
out.
have been compulsory?
History?
Yeah.
It's a tough one because obviously I didn't study it. No, I did
Did you do
actually.
it for the leaving cert?
I did. I picked it
Okay.
up for the
Well,
leaving
that must
cert.
be kind of.
It was
I suppose
well, we see
very
in
different.
TY you get a touch of everything,
Yeah.
and then you get to make your choices about your leaving cert subjects. So I did a bit of it in TY and found it very interesting, and then picked it for the leaving cert, and actually ended up being one of my best subjects.
That's the one you got the D in.
Yeah. I wouldn't be here if that was the case, Darren. In fairness.
That's why
So
you're doing communication.
first time round. Yeah.
Exactly.
Experience, how many people were in your history class? Because there were about 10 in ours.
There was 25, I'd say.
Oh,
wow.
Yeah. Most of them now had done history for the junior cert. I hadn't, but yeah, I found it really interesting, the topics and everything. I
really
particularly
enjoyed history
enjoyed
as well.
the learning about kind of later modern Irish
Yeah.
history. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. The the project that you have to do as well.
Yeah, I did enjoy the project I did.
Oh, you
What
really?
did you do your project in?
I did it on the kind of life and career of Ralph Abernathy, who is one of the leaders of the civil rights movement and also like kind of best friend of Martin Luther King.
Very good.
He added an autobiography which was very helpful because I pretty much based my research exclusively on that.
On the autobiography.
But I found it as a subject very interesting, I suppose.
I did mine on JFK's role in the space race.
Oh, very interesting.
I thought it'd be more interesting than it actually was.
Yeah, one small step.
I basically had 1 or 2 books that I read, and they were a bit of a slog to get through. But eventually got it done, and it wasn't too bad in the end. But definitely for the exam, I remember the Leaving Cert History exam. We had prepared every single question that came up weeks before, and it was literally a perfect paper.
Yeah.
I did the bare minimum in terms of.
And did you do history for the Leaving Cert?
I didn't. I actually did it for 5th year as an extra subject, and I ended up dropping it. But I enjoyed it. Essay based things wouldn't really be
Your forte.
my forte for that, like, surprisingly. But,
that's interesting.
It was. I really enjoyed it for junior cert level. And I kind of thought it would have been one of my main subjects, but just it wasn't for me.
Yeah, because it's funny because obviously like I said, I had the choice between history and geography. I got an A in my geography junior cert and then dropped it for the Leaving Cert and didn't do history and then picked that for the junior cert and picked it up.
I'm sure Anne loved that one at home.
Yeah, she was a bit puzzled by that one.
Actually, on that, Daire, what did your parents say when you came back from Rome and you said, I might go back to college? Were they not like, go on out and get a job there?
No, I think they were. Well, my father certainly was keen that I would go on and study. Like, so there was no.
Did you come from an academic?
No, not
household?
at all. My people were in business. Not academic at all, but they were keen, I suppose, that I would qualify at something, you know.
Okay.
So that's how I ended up.
So, tell me, from your time, so we've covered up until about Trinity, and you're here now in DCU. There's a lot, in the middle. Fill in the gaps for us.
How many
now,
gaps?
And one thing I did want to pick up on was the fact that you studied in Harvard.
Well, I don't know that we want to go into that necessarily here. I mean, that's executive education. Do you know what I mean?
Okay.
So we could probably prefer not to. Do you know what I mean?
Okay, right. Yeah, it was just the thing that I saw. I was like,
well, we can talk about that later on, but I would prefer not to. If you don't mind.
Yeah, no worries.
We can talk about continuing development and so on.
Yeah.
You know
So
what I mean?
from between.
We can take that. Yeah.
So for your time
I'll
after.
talk about it then.
Yeah.
Right?
So from your time after Trinity, what were you filling your time with?
Yeah, when I finished the PhD, I was, as everybody was, I suppose at that point, my colleagues were teaching part-time in a lot of places. So teaching a course teaching in UCD, teaching in Trinity, teaching in Maynooth, and then it was interesting. I was asked to teach a course in St. Pat's in Drumcondra. So I went out. It was a course in local history. It was for BA students, but I remember being very struck by the students in terms of the quality of the students, but just the personality. They were very generous. They were very, very friendly. There was a very nice atmosphere, and even to the point that, you know, we'd go on, we say it was on local history, so sources for local history. So we'd go to the National Archives, or we'd go to the library in Trinity, we'd go to the National Library, and we might go for kind of someplace afterwards, you know, for a drink or something. But students were always like exceptionally friendly, and there was a great kind of rapport between them. But that was a once off. I just taught that, and that was the end of it. And then a job came up in Galway, contract lectureship in the history department in Galway. So I went to Galway, so I enjoyed that. And as I said, that was on contract. So a job was advertised in St. Pat's and Drumcondra then in the history department, 3-year contract. So I applied for that and got it. So I enjoyed that kind of hugely. Used to teach kind of survey courses. Professor Jimmy Kelly, and my own research interests were fairly similar. So Jimmy taught a lot of Irish history. I taught kind of European history. So we do the Renaissance and the Reformation, first year French Revolution, and so on, and then specialist courses around 1798 rebellion. And then the one I loved teaching was the history of the slave trade, but we can come back to that in a minute. But Pat's was a special place, there's no question about it. The calibre of the students were first class, very good staff. There was like an excellent staff, and just the impact that those students had. So that the BA students, a lot of the BA students wanted to be teachers. So they had very high points, and it was a significant number of them, I would say, it's generalisation, but had missed teaching by a small number of points. So they were very bright, and there was a good kind of culture of the place, a nice creative energy in Pat's. So I was there from the kind of mid-90s as a lecturer in the history department, and I had responsibility for quality assurance and had developed a kind of a European profile and was on some European board in that area. And I remember being struck at one stage. I was invited by the French Minister for Higher Education to a meeting in Strasbourg that they were merging the 3 universities in Strasbourg to create this huge university. And I remember being very struck at the time that that's the way, you know, policy was going, and that's the way things would be. So mergers were the way forward. So we would create kind of critical mass, and in some ways Pat's was kind of crying out for that, because the scale, I mean, we just under 3,000 students, so it was an in-between scale. It was too big to be small and too small to be big. So the kind of range of things that students could be offered were limited in terms of the supports, I think, that students need now. But equally, as I say, that relationship between the BA and the BEd, there was a move to reform the BEd, and this is quite technical, but the BEd in St. Pat's was a kind of a hybrid. You had a major and a minor, so students doing education, studying to be teachers, would have education would be their major, but they would have a minor academic subject, so that could be, say, history or English or Gaeilge or whatever. But there was a reform of the BEd, and that discretionary time was reduced. So the numbers, the ability to do history as a minor was removed. So I suppose at one level there was a question over the future of the humanities within the college, and it just made a lot of sense that we had very good relations with DCU, and we were a linked college at DCU.
Up the road, of course, yeah.
There was never, you know, DCU never did what Pat's did. We were absolutely complementary. You know, if you take Mary I in Limerick again as a parallel, their degree was similar, but UL had a history department and Mary I had a history department. We didn't have that. And the law and government here and the history department in St. Pat's were very complementary. And even in terms of education studies here focused on second level, where Pat's was traditionally, our strength at undergraduate level at least, was primary. So the overlap between the libraries of St. Pat's and the library of DCU is about 5%. So I think that's a very good kind of symbol or metaphor for the complementarity of the institutions. So the timing was right. So I was appointed president of St. Pat's. Breen was obviously president here. Breen's father, incidentally, had been a graduate of St. Pat's. So Breen had a very good sense of the of teaching, a sense of the college, and a huge esteem for teaching. I often joke with him that if he had higher points, he might have done a BEd. But so he had a great sense, and I think that the timing was right, and people could see that it made a lot of sense to merge the institutions. And Matt O'Day joined with us, and the Church of Ireland, and the four colleges came together to create what we have as DCU now. So it was very, very interesting. And then, as I say, I moved from being president of St. Pat's to deputy president of DCU. So that's where I find myself now.
And here we are, today.
Here we are today in this lovely office, yeah.
So let's talk about it. So day to day, what does the job entail for yourself?
Yeah, what does the day in the life of the deputy president look like? What time do you rise at? What do you have for breakfast?
Yeah, I have like one of the things again, a lot of volunteer work that I do in different areas, things that I'm interested in, and university is a wonderful place to work for that, because there's just so much happening in a university. You know, we say about DCU that our life mission is about transforming lives and societies, and no 2 days are the same. And I'm really, really struck again and again, just there's so much happening here in DCU at every level, and it's wonderful to be part of that. So the deputy president's role, I support the president. So I joke about him in the Sergio Romero, this operation, the reserve goalkeeper, the best number 2 in the world.
Yeah.
And
So is that a direct comparison between Brian MacCraith and David DeGea?
David DeGea.
Okay.
David DeGea.
It's not one that
So-
I've heard before, but I'll
So
roll
what
with
I
it.
do is I sit here and I stretch and put on the gloves and there are a lot of things that the student experience, for instance, I have responsibility for student experience in the university. So that's not the academic experience, but the social experience, the sporting experience, and all of that. So the library sport would come under my watch. The library again comes under my watch. The alumni. We have the arts initiative again. I work with Brian again to support the kind of strategic planning and the implementation of that. We have an interesting exercise of this strategic intelligence unit. So that's about using data to improve the student experience. So to try to anticipate what student needs are in areas like, say, retention with library usage, building usage, and so on. Then we have this unit, operational excellence, and that's about kind of trying to reform the processes, about how we do things. And it's not rocket science. It's about the collective wisdom of the people on the team and the users of services say, well, how could we make this better? And we work on individual projects like that. But that's a collective exercise, and we do that on the basis that, you know, if there's a problem, it's nobody's fault. We all have ownership of it. And then I suppose over and above that, there are a lot of committees I chair, like budget committee, academic promotions committee, the deans report to me, and I sit on a lot of interview panels as well. So it's varied. It's very varied, but it's very interesting, and it's wonderful. As I say, you'd be really proud of the things that are happening in all 5 faculties, and just the calibre of the staff that we have in the support areas. I mean, if you look at student support and development, although Claire reports to Etna, but if you look at that area as an example, absolutely intent on improving the experience of the students, protecting the welfare of the students, anticipating their needs, access students, extending out that welcome. We're very lucky. There are serious challenges, I mean, there's no doubt about that, but we're very lucky to work in a wonderful place.
What are some of those challenges, if you mind me asking?
I think the biggest challenge for the Irish third level education sector is resourcing. There's no doubt about that the European University Association have done this survey of university systems across Europe, and they identify Ireland as at risk, that the funding has been cut dramatically and student numbers have increased.
It's half per student in the past 10 years.
So the challenge is to deliver more on less, and I think that people have taken that very seriously. But you can see the impact of that. We don't have money, and I suppose the state doesn't have it. Again, in terms of student loans or fees, there's a challenge. How do you do that going forward? It's a real challenge, but that's a nettle that will have to be grasped in the future, because you can't run a world-class education system that's under-resourced. And like, unlike other countries that have natural resources, you know, our only resource is our people. And we've called out talent in the strategic plan, because, as I say, that's what we do. But we need to be resourced to do that.
So at the moment, Daire, what are you prioritising most to make the DCU student experience the best it can be?
Personally, or what, as a university?
Well, either yourself and Brian.
I think, well, one of the things I suppose I enjoy in the daily routine, and just come from with the orientation for new staff, and that's fantastic. You know, when you go into a room with 35 new colleagues right across the board, talented people who are going to commit their careers to DCU, their energies and their creativity, that's fantastic to come in contact with that enthusiasm. And the promise that we make is that we'll be able to develop them and support them to grow and to thrive in this context. And another initiative we have at the moment is the Visual Arts Initiative within the university, that under the strategic plan we called out creativity, and we hope to establish an Institute of Creativity Daire Keogh in the School of English is leading on that. But another thing that we did was we appointed a visual arts coordinator, and Marcella Bannon. And what Marcella is doing with the committee is to really develop the visual culture of the university. I mean, Declan and his colleagues have this master plan to transform the public realm, but what we're trying to do is to bring kind of creativity, kind of more visual culture in terms of art, to create opportunities for people to express themselves. Students in any faculty could take modules on, say, creativity, artistic literacy and so on, but also to invest in the print culture. We hope to have kind of public sculpture. We've ambitions for a arts trail that would link the campuses and the neighbouring areas. So that's been particularly pleasant to see kind of students coming forward who have interest in arts, but also colleagues who have great artistic ability and sensitivities. And there's a wonderful module Bridge Casey coordinates in the nursing school, where where they bring in artists, and the artists work with the students in terms of developing kind of empathy and expression and health and humanities together. So again, to bring that creativity to all our areas, whether it's the business school or kind of engineering or science and health or the humanities or education. In a lot of the faculties are engaged in curriculum reform on an ongoing basis. So again, the business school is an example there, kind of examining all of the programs, kind of root and branch, about what needs to be done to refresh ourselves. And that's, I think, again, in terms of quality assurance, is part of my area as well. I think there's a very good quality culture in the university. Like what do we need to do to give our students the best experience? That's important. The engineering, again, have this Ignite program, again, which is similar to the BEST program in the business school, again, where they look at say orientation for students. Like, as soon as the student accepts their offer on the CAO, now we engage with them at that point. So we've got introduction to DCU modules online, kind of really shepherding them through those transitions. So that's a priority for us. One of the things, I suppose, is in terms of the DCU person, Ross Munley, who's our Director of Alumni Affairs, makes the point that our alumni are our most enduring partners. Mm-hmm. That students who've come through here, they remain alumni for the rest of our lives. And as part of the student experience, as I say, we want to engage with students as soon as they receive their CAO offer, as soon as they realise that they are the lucky ones going to DCU, that we welcome them in. And that's the beginning of a relationship. So the university will be there to support the graduates as alumni, and again to create that community. And you'll have seen, for instance, kind of graduate mentoring of students. It's just about, sometimes people think about kind of alumni is about tapping the alumni for funding. This isn't about funding. This is about an ongoing friendship, and to create this DCU community out there. So Ross Munley heads up that area with Mary, and they have student volunteers. It's a very small, as I say, small unit, but making big impact. And that's an area that we hope will grow. We've
actually benefited from it ourselves.
Yeah.
Ross has invited us to some of the alumni networking events.
Yeah.
And we've took full advantage of
We've managed to get some great guests, like we said at the start. We availed of some funding opportunities that the alumni offer to clubs and societies. They've been a terrific help for us so far, and we hope that once we're gone and out of here, that we can repay the favour at some stage.
We have exceptional graduates, and you meet them in every walk of life, and they're by and large very loyal to the university and willing to come back and give back. And the student mentoring is a big part of that.
We've had, I think, 9 or 10 DCU alumni out of our interviews, and they've all had nothing but good things to say about the college and their time here. So the proof is in the pudding.
It's a special place. Mental health again is a priority. Sports, the DCU Healthy, again focusing on participation, and also performance athletes. So really, I suppose our priority is to create an environment where students will flourish, and whatever that takes, that's what we're dedicated to do.
So sport is obviously one of the faculties that you oversee as well. Sport is a big part of DCU, and they have a great tradition. Especially like one of our former guests, Jenny Egan, couldn't speak highly enough of the support she was given during her time in DCU. She broke her course into an extra couple of years, wasn't it?
I think it would have been 4, but it was made into 7 just so it could accommodate her sporting career as well.
Is that something that's important?
Well, we have James Galvin is the director of sport, and James has worked with registry and with the faculties in terms of flexibility for elite athletes. I mean, if you're performing at that level, it's very difficult to pursue a course in the normal way. So there is a policy there to accommodate students. We make all reasonable accommodations to allow them through. That's important for us.
Daire, not to say that it's coming anytime soon, but at the end of your tenure here as Deputy President of the College, what would you like to say about your time here?
What would I like to say?
Yeah. What would you like your peers to say about your time here, maybe?
Well, what I'd like people to say is that I worked with them to facilitate the delivery of our mission to transform lives and societies, and that I supported them in that. That's what I mean, the role of the deputy is to support the president in that, and that would be, I would hope, that I'm supporting bringing the delivery of the strategy, but also all colleagues and students across the university that kind of working as a catalyst to facilitate change and to make this an even better place if that's possible. And that sounds pious, I know, but that's what a deputy does.
Yeah. Will we move into some of the lighter aspects?
The lighter side of it, yeah. Sure.
So, Daire, tea or coffee?
First thing in the morning, tea, then coffee.
What? Why?
So first tea, then coffee?
Yes, oh yes.
Okay.
That's an odd one.
Start with the tea and then move on to
And
the
how do
coffee.
you take the respective beverages?
I take tea black and take coffee with milk.
Okay, fair enough. So tea gets you up in the morning then? And when does the coffee come? Later in the day?
Well, I could move from tea straight into coffee.
Okay.
That's kind of a sin.
The Laois Dublin divide is growing ever so more in that corner.
Yeah.
Daire, 3 guests, living or dead, that you would invite over for dinner.
On a regular basis.
A once-off evening, you're having dinner and you're allowed to invite.
If you want.
It depends how Gavin. It depends how the dinner goes, Gavin. No, but three figures, living or dead.
Living. I'd like the Beckhams.
Okay.
That would be a nice evening. We had Christine Lagarde visited us here at the university earlier in the year. I wouldn't mind an evening with Christine Lagarde. I'd like to meet Ed Sheeran.
Are you a big fan?
I just like to listen to his music, and I think he's interesting. Yeah.
Very good. Yeah, that's.
Yeah, I'll take that one.
I'll take it. Yeah.
That's an eclectic.
And David Beckham.
And Dave Beckham. Okay. Your ideal Saturday night. Now you control everything. Everything is within your power. What would you do with your Saturday night?
What I like to do, I like to do on Saturday night is I like to have a meal with friends, with Katie, my wife, and with friends. That's my ideal. That's what I like doing best.
Okay. Would you stay in Dublin? Like
well,
we
we
told you,
could-
everything is in your control.
Well, you could stay at home, but it's the company that makes the night for me.
Very good.
Lovely. Are you? Do you engage much with technology now, Daire?
In terms of
Would technology be a
do I
big
have a
part of your
drone?
day to
do I have a drone?
We actually just saw a drone before we got
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Funnily
Yeah,
enough,
yeah.
somebody
Do
was
I have
flying
a
a drone
drone?
outside
No,
Alabama.
I don't have a drone.
Okay.
No, I do. Yes, I suppose like everybody else, I'm probably addicted to my phone. I'd say.
Yeah.
That's
So
the-
what I was gonna ask is there a gadget that you simply couldn't go without during the?
Well, I could go without the phone if it was taken from me. I'd adapt.
Okay.
But I love the phone. I like I suppose social media. I love Spotify. I'd hate to be without Spotify.
Are you a big music fan, Darren?
Yeah.
Favorite artist?
I would listen to really eclectic. I
Okay.
could listen to anything. Really.
And would you be a live event scorer?
Well, we've got four kids, and they're still quite young, so probably not as much as I would like to. But
Right. And favourite book?
favorite book
Yeah.
of all time.
Well, it can be either from history or fiction. You know, you can
Yeah,
categorize it
I
if you want.
suppose in terms of reading, I'd read history. I suppose historical biography, kind of early modern history.
David McCullough.
I like
Right.
I like historical fiction.
Oh,
You know-
David McCullough was actually rejected from the Masters Journalism here in DCU.
Really,
was
but see, we're
actually
very
interesting
high
fact.
standards.
Yeah.
Think how good he would have been if he had. I
I'm
think
going to tell him you said that.
I think that's the real question about what he could have been.
Someone
But
else.
Kira King.
Kira King, yeah.
yeah, so fiction, and I also like. It's funny because my background is in history. It's solidly academic. It's a family kind of business, but I like to read business. I like to read management books as well. And in terms of my own, I suppose, CPD, I think one of the things that we do well for staff here in DCU that we've called out in the strategy is around kind of personal development. So I do think that we need to keep learning. So I'm always pleased for an opportunity to do courses, and I've been fortunate. I've been able to do like executive ed courses in different places. But I like reading management books, strategy.
Fantastic.
How do you like to unwind there?
Well, back to again, I enjoy company. That's I swim when I can. I try to swim on the way home from work. After work, I suppose go for a walk, but I unwind with company and, as I say, listen to music.
What do you do
The
after?
cinema. I like the cinema.
Okay.
Yeah.
After a
Cinema-
particularly frustrating day, what is it that you get home and do you pick up a book? Do you pick up a newspaper? Some people, I like to get my hurl in a slitter and just puck it off the wall for half an hour.
Yeah. No, I just, as I say, we just kind of ordinary domestic things. I go home to the family, have a dinner at home or whatever. Kind of be with the kids. Or I enjoy the cinemas. Probably in terms of kind of relaxation, it's kind of great escapism. You can just immerse yourself fully in the.
Do we have a favourite film, Daire?
Oh, a favourite film. God, I'd be hard pressed to think of a favourite.
Mine is a fairly cliche one. Shawshank Redemption.
Shawshank Redemption.
Yeah,
Yeah.
massive fan.
Anything
yeah.
you've seen recently that's
I saw,
Interesting.
well, just last week I went to see Vice, the
Dick Cheney?
Dick
With
Cheney
Steve
film.
Carell and
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
interesting, and you
Mm.
get great kind of sense of kind of leadership and style, and I think morality
Mm.
kind of above.
Yeah, I
above-
just find Christian Bale, like, his transformations into roles.
Yeah,
Yeah, like, he was, what, 50 kg for the movie Machinist, like, 15 years ago,
It's
when
incredible.
he packed on, like, nearly
yeah.
£100 for this,
Yeah.
this movie.
But even, I mean, some actors, I mean, I think like Meryl Streep is a good example. That I think that she really immerses herself in a role that you're less conscious that it's Meryl Streep. And I think Matt Damon's probably my favourite actor. But again, it's obviously Matt Damon, but he's not like a Michael Caine. But it's Michael Caine in every movie.
So we'll end with.
We'll end with, we ask our guests at the end of every episode, any advice or the best advice that's been imparted onto yourself?
Any advice? Oh, that's a tricky one, isn't it? I think. I just think about people's just to be the best you can be for yourself. You know, just to try to kind of be yourself, and to do whatever it needs to allow yourself to be yourself, and that's what I would hope that people do. That's to be the best version of yourself that you can be.
Fantastic, yeah.
We'll take that one.
Yeah.
Will you think? Okay.
Yeah, Daire, thanks a million
No, you're welcome.
for
Thank you very much.
for letting us come
Was
up
that
here.
all right?
Yeah, that was fantastic. Yeah, and we'll be sure to send you on all relevant links when
Yeah.
the
Do you think I
episode
need
goes
to
out.
spice up my social life? Or
I'd say you have a pretty good gig going so far.
Yeah.
take up the
I don't
piano,
know how you'd have any time for it.
play the piano, or go to more meetings, or
No, I think
think you
you're
got
pretty
enough
good
meetings.
doing what you're doing.
yeah.
This has been In Conversation with Daire Keogh, Deputy President of DCU. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you next time.